Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right. We're here live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. This is the Quiet Warrior Show. We're live streaming today with a guest, and I'll introduce him in a minute. You'll see him there waiting on the screen. Now, everybody, live streaming is simply letting you peek into the studio as we record an interview. This interview will be produced as a YouTube premiere video in the near future, as well as released on the Quiet Warrior Show across all international podcast channels. So I'm excited today to bring you our special guest, Mr. Brett Brown. Hey, Brett, welcome to the show. We've been looking forward to this.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here, Brett. I want to just tell everybody how we met, and maybe you can give your version of that. There was a day that I met you where I walked into a restaurant in North Vancouver. And for a lot of my followers, they'll know that I've been of a side hustle at this restaurant just to keep physically active while I'm dealing with recovery from a concussion. And it's a lot of fun. And I walked in and I saw this guy in the kitchen. It's an open kitchen concept. And it was this guy, Brett Brown. And I started taking notice that you had some talents. You were a great cook. I'd call you a chef. And the attitude is positive. And I started thinking, what does this guy do outside of this place? And then you and I got to know each other. We became friends. And one day you said, I'm a photographer. Let's go out together. And that's really where the story began for me, how I was mesmerized by really what is happening here. Now, everybody, I think this isn't the last you'll hear of Brett Brown. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll turn it to Brett. He's a budding award-winning wildlife photographer, has set out to spread the importance of conservation. Living surrounded by nature has inspired him to share the beauty of the world that we've given and forgotten, and bring about an understanding and respect among his small but growing fans. Brett is currently on display. We'll talk about that. He's got some photographs that were chosen and will be displayed proudly for others to see. And outside of the world of photography, he's a naturalist, focusing on the nature around him that he can preserve. And he believes in the key to healthy life, which really this whole passion for photography, he's told me, has helped him turn around his life when he needed it the most. So, hey, Brett, let's just get you into your story. Tell us where this all began.
Well, so I have a lot of family in Alberta, and my grandma especially lives out, not in the middle of nowhere, but pretty much in the middle of nowhere, like way off on a farm. And I grew up a lot. I spent a lot of time there when I was young. And it's just such a nice contrast from the city to be able to just let go of everything that is, we have to worry about so much stuff living in the city compared out there. It's just such a simple way of living. So coming back and forth all the time, and then I start high school, and I'm never really good at any courses, I guess. Like I'm not bad at anything, but I don't really succeed well at anything. I have lots of friends, but it's always hard for me to like really invest myself fully into something until I found a photography course. And I only took the one because we only had one at my school. But that one course, I think, was the only time that I actually like really, you could tell that I was trying. So, which is rare for me when I'm in school. But coming out of that, I had a camera that my parents bought me for a while, and I would take it with me wherever. We went on all sorts of trips across the world, but we went to Alaska, and we would go on these tours where you would see like just amazing things, beautiful mountain ranges, like wide open fields with bears everywhere. It's like the stuff of my dreams. So I always kept it close to me, but I never really got so far into it. I was always caught up in work and just whatever. But I guess I just got stuck in a rut at some point. I was like, I'm just waking up every day and I'm going to work and I'm doing the exact same thing over and over and over, but I'm not really living for myself, is how I felt.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to put a little bit of money down. I'm going to upgrade what I have and see if I can start not going like to the top, but I want to at least make some art while I'm out because I'm trying to go out as much as I can. Being out in nature is like what sets my soul at ease. So if I can go out and I can bring a camera with me, why don't I mean, I always see crazy things anyways. Why not just try and capture some of it? So that's what I did, and then I've been upgrading as much as I can. It's a lot of money, but the the things you see out there are really amazing. And to be able to bring some of that home and show people is just such a gift, it feels like. It's just so much fun.
Oh, that's amazing. And everybody, if you can see Brett, and Brett, just give me a thumbs up with the sound check. Again, everybody, we're doing this unscripted. We're doing it live, unedited, and that's how we do the show. You'll see Brett taking a drink of water there, and he's just being himself. And in fact, when we first got on this, Brett was asking me, is there too much stuff in my room? And I said, no, no. I said, that's exactly what you want. That's how you want this to be. You want it to be authentic. Everybody, I want to get into the backstory a bit that Brett told us, because on the show we use it as a teaching moment, Brett, that we talk about life's adversity, and a bit about my lifeline, and
Mhm.
I admire and respect what you said about school, and maybe being bored or not. It wasn't your words, but not, you said not trying, and you found something that you got passionate about. And one of the things I found is that, we grow up and we have experiences in life, and passion comes usually in the first 10 years. It's something we were doing, and many people don't follow their passion. Sometimes because it doesn't pay the bills, or maybe sometimes because they think, what will other people think? When you discovered this thing, the lens and the camera, and photography and wildlife, what did you think other people might think if you pursued that? Did you care?
Honestly, no, I didn't really care. I've always tried to not really care what people think about me because I just feel like it's my life.
Yeah.
But
Abs-
yeah, like it makes me feel in a way that I can't really describe. It just makes me feel like what I'm doing is what I want to be doing. It's what I should be doing with my life. So why care what people think?
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, as you're there telling us a bit more of the story, I want to ask you to talk about one thing, and that is that, when you first uh, realized you wanted to be a photographer, what did you do? What was the first thing that you did?
I told my mom. I texted her. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna start buying stuff for cameras. She's like, well, you're crazy. It costs so much money. But she's a mom, so of course she helps as much as she can. Um, and yeah, she's been a really great. My whole family has just been so supportive. It's insane. Like everybody I ask about or I show my pictures as much as I can. I share it to them before I post them.
Yeah.
They always love it, and they're just so supportive.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I want to talk about the journey that I had with you. So everybody, we're talking about a guy who figured out how to take photography. So the one thing I want to point out, if you're watching the live stream and you'll see the premiere video, is we put one of Brett's photographs on my green screen right behind me. Now, Brett, I don't know if I appear frozen on the screen. We've been having a bit of a tech issue, but can you see that image clearly?
Yep.
All right. So tell us what it is. Tell us how you got that.
So that's a northern flicker. It's one of my favorite birds. It's a pretty big. It's about the size of a crow. It's a woodpecker, and they live all across North America. That one was actually in my backyard. I have a lot of bird feeders up because I like having bird feeders. It kind of gives me an insight into how the birds behave. So if I
Yeah.
can see that from my backyard, I know what to expect when I'm out shooting in the wild. But that one comes to my feeder every day, and it usually is hiding in like bushes or a tree. That's the one time I've had the chance that it stuck its head out from something, and thankfully I have my camera with me.
Oh, that's spectacular. Now, I want you to, if you have it with you there, um, you pick up your camera, just show everybody the
Yeah,
gear, because a lot of our audience haven't done photography, but that's pretty honking lens.
it is. It's pretty
That's pretty
heavy too.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's got camouflage on it too, which is kind of
Yeah.
cool. So what do
And
you
birds will hang off of this sometimes, which is funny.
really?
Yeah, little birds will just fly up and grab onto it.
So what do you call that lens? I mean, what kind of lens is that?
It's called a super telephoto.
Yeah,
That's the technical name. A lot of people call it zoom lens,
yeah.
but that's a 200 to 500 millimeter. I have a 150 to 600, but I prefer this one. It's just sharper.
Yeah.
Um, you can shoot with anything I'd say above 200 or 200 minimum is
Yeah.
a good starting point. That's what I was doing earlier. I had a 200, but the longer lenses obviously let you get closer, and
That's
you can get some
incredible.
really nice pictures.
Yeah. And so what kind of cash is that? I mean, in today's terms, would somebody have to pay for a lens like that?
Um, well, I'm gonna say not bad, but it depends who you're asking. That was about $1,500.
Yeah,
They can get, I mean, there's some for 13,000, and they get really expensive, but the quality is insane from those ones.
that's awesome. So I want to go back to what I was saying before to you privately about, I'm blown away that when first of all, taking that photo, it didn't just happen in a shutter click, right? There was
Hmm.
some extreme patience involved. Walk us through the process as a guy who creates through the lens. I mean, you have a vision and an eye for this. When do you take the shot? How long did it take for this guy to give you the right? How do you know that's the shot? And then give us a sense of how long you might find yourself waiting for this little fella to give you his prized appearance.
There's a lot of luck involved. This one was pretty lucky because I didn't have to sit around forever. But usually I'll just feel when I know that something's about to happen because I see these animals so much now that I can kind of tell when they're about to do something interesting.
Yeah,
So I'll just get ready with my finger down on the trigger and I'll just shoot away as much as I can when something's happening, and I'll pick my favorite picture from that.
yeah,
But really a lot of the time you just have to know the area and you have to know what you're looking for. Like I'll sit at a spot and just wait for hours sometimes until maybe a coyote will pass through or anything like that. Sometimes you can get it pretty quick. Like there's been times where I've literally walked up on an animal that's like waking up and it doesn't notice me there and I haven't noticed it. But
wow,
most of the time you have to be out there like dusk to dawn. Um, it really helps if you bring like a portable camping chair and then you can
yeah.
just sit down wherever and watch. But
Well,
once you
that's
get into that mindset of just sitting and waiting and see what happens, you get like a certain clarity and you can kind of just time doesn't really matter.
well, okay. So listen to that, everybody. It's a teaching moment. Time doesn't matter, and one of the things, there's a good TED talk on this about passion. When you find it, time stands still.
Mm,
You feel no pain. Everything is happy. I mean, that's what passion is. I did I hear you say sometimes a couple hours? that's
yeah.
that's so that's the part about photography that I'm impressed with. And everybody, this is a budding photographer, but he's already having his photos, put out in galleries. And you're at the early part of your profession with this. Uh, tell me about the well. Let's talk about the first experience I had going out into the wild with you. And this was like life changing for me. So I want to tell the story and then a little bit, and then pass it to you to fill in the blanks, Brett.
Cool.
So, do you remember that time you asked me? We were working together, and you asked me if I wanted to go out and shoot, do some photography, or you would. Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. So we basically agreed to get together, and it was a early morning. And I remember because it's the fall here in Port Moody, British Columbia, is where I live, and you're not far from me. And it's very rare, but the fog had settled, almost like pea soup, low onto the city. Now, for those who aren't from this part, because the show's international here, uh, Port Moody, British Columbia. British Columbia is the westernmost province in Canada. Port Moody is well, they call it the city of the arts. Go figure. Here's an artist we're talking to, but it's actually like a port city, and we have a body of water. It's a large body of water called Burrard Inlet, and around the Burrard Inlet are kilometers and kilometers of trails through the woods. There's bridges that have been built. It's spectacular. And in fact, if you got in a canoe and went out down the Burrard Inlet, you would eventually float down to the Pacific Rim. That's where we are. So Brett and I went out, and I remember that morning, Brett, we put on our ball caps like we have here, and we walked, and we couldn't see more than 10, 20 feet ahead.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
rough.
it was rough, but everything appeared to be foggy and white. And there was one shot, and when I produce this YouTube premiere, I'm going to put a few of the photos in there. You have some you're giving me. There was one shot that is stunning for me. There were these snags, these old trees or logs, I guess, the stumps sticking up out of the water like telephone poles. And there was, I think, 4 or 5 of them. They're spaced apart about 10, 20 feet. And I was at a distance, and I took a photo of it with my iPhone. My iPhone is an amateur camera. And I remember looking back at it and showing you, and you were standing actually turned sideways with a backpack on. And what I looked at after I took the picture, it appeared to be basically a white background of cloud or fog, and these black things sticking up through the fog, and then this other object which appeared to look like one of those stumps or trees, but with a little lump in his back, and that was actually you. It's the most incredible picture I've ever taken, because it sends the imagination on a journey. And so I just want you to talk about that. When you take your pictures and look at them after, do you ever look at them and say, wow, this, and then think something, it represents something, your imagination, you took this, but to you there's a meaning attached to it?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like if I get really invested in trying to find something, it's hard to not get obsessed. Like a lot of my friends that are into this, I talk to them and they'll say the biggest thing is to just not get obsessed with an animal, because it'll never happen until you least expect it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're really into it and you follow the signs, you do everything that you need to do, you can just you find that animal. It's just such a great feeling, and then you take a picture and you're like, this is everything that I've worked for, and it's the best feeling.
Yeah, it's a sense of accomplishment. And I'm also thinking out loud here. They say that people who discover a passion actually find that it's classic hero's journey, as I call it, that they're doing something to better the world, or they're doing something to help other people. And when you're doing that, you can't feel but you're fulfilled. Is there a big part of this about you going beyond you to do something to create happiness, joy for maybe people like me who look at your work, or conserving wildlife and improving the planet?
Yeah, totally. Especially right now with everybody being stuck inside all the time, I like to be able to bring a little piece of the outside to their phones or their computer or whatever, so they can get a little bit of that feeling that they're outside. But I really like the conservation aspect, because in a city as crazy as Vancouver, there's so much wildlife and nature everywhere. But I guess we're just so used to it that we kind of take it for granted here. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on still that's changing everything, the climate around here, and it's putting a lot of animals at risk. And I really I just love being able to speak for the animals and help get the message across that, hey, these things are real, they're alive, and they're not going to be here forever if we don't keep taking care of them, or not even taking care of them, but respecting their distance, giving them the space that they need. It's a really important thing.
Yeah, and that's amazing to me. First of all, the key word of respect there. I mean, they're animals. I mean, some people don't treat animals with respect, but they're this part of the species that inhabits the earth. They're part of the ecosystem. They're part of what brings joy to us. Remember when we were out there walking the trails in Port Moody that day? There was this coyote that ran by. Tell us
Yeah,
about that. Tell us about that.
that was beautiful. It was just like a ghost out in the middle of the marsh. Just it was so cool. I wish I got a picture of it. But just
Yeah.
like a wide open field of all this fog and this little, I don't even know what color it was. I couldn't even tell. Just a little blob of a coyote walks across and just stares at us for a bit before running away.
It was the coolest thing, and I got to tell you that I had this flashback there, and I have an idea. I'll run by you offline. You know that I've written a book, and there's a process right now to create a movie, And one of the scenes in the movie involves wolves, a pack of wolves. And when I saw that happen, that moment, my brain, it's three-dimensional. My brain went on a journey somewhere else. And you didn't know that, but my brain was actually going on a journey to the scene in the movie that's being created about my experience with, in my mind anyway, about a pack of wolves. And so that's the thing about photography. They say picture's worth 1,000 words. That what you saw in that and how you described it now is just one story. I describe it with my story. And that's, I think, the beauty of the work you're doing, because everybody can find in your picture some connection to something they relate to in their lives. And that's clearly getting into the journey with you. So I love that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about something you said. For example, you showed me recently, and I hope we can get this picture in the video. It's a stunning picture. Tell us about the owl. And then you said something about how do you know when you're looking for something specifically? You said you do something and then you go. How do you know?
So the owl, the great horned owl, I'll definitely send you that picture. That
Yeah.
one took me a week to find. I
Wow.
knew it was in this one place. Well, I knew that it had been in this place because I have a couple people in the community that tell me
Yeah.
if something's going on, something cool. So I went out every morning, and this was right after Halloween, so I was a little worried that the fireworks had scared it away, and I
Yeah.
was starting to lose hope. But I had gone out every day, like 6 days. I didn't see anything. And then the seventh day I get there and it was an older lady was just walking the trail and she's like, "Oh yeah, there's the owl over there." And I'm like, "You mean the owl I've been looking for this whole time?" And she's not even interested in it. So I run all around the place. I don't see anything. Um, and then I'm about to leave and I see something flying through the trees in the distance. So I'm like, okay, I can't tell what it is, but at least let me do one more loop. Just I don't want to lose the chance if that's what it is. And then so I'm like halfway through and I hear a lot of crows. That's a good way to tell if there's like a big bird if you're looking for. A lot of crows or
Yeah.
jays, for example, will usually gang up on it and start screaming at it. So and I have like my backpack over here, probably 20 pounds of gear on me, and I'm running through the forest um, until I see this tree. There's all these crows standing in. So I'm like, okay, it has to be here, or the crows are just being crows. So I sit there for a bit, and it took me about 5 minutes, like looking exactly where it was. I couldn't tell what it was looking at because it looks exactly like the tree. And in the picture, you can see the difference, but when you're really out there and you're not right in the animal's face, obviously, I was like 20 feet away, you can't tell. It's so hard to see. So I just sat there and wait until I saw like a little bit of movement from its head, and then I finally saw it. I'm like, okay, that's an owl. And it took me a minute to like not scream happiness, but I
That's
took a few pictures and I just sat there for about 45 minutes watching it. It didn't care I was there. It fell asleep, and then I packed up and left.
That's fantastic. Well, everybody, I mean, we're learning here about the passion of photography, and young Brett Brown, he's a budding, growing photographer. His work is getting noticed. I want to say this. I don't have an ego on my show, but I got to say this, Brett, even though I know you and we've become friends, that when I was a young boy in school, I used to have tons and tons of National Geographic magazines. I subscribed to it. You know,
Yeah.
I had my little paper route at age 12, and I'd made some money, and I would subscribe. I didn't get my parents to pay because things were not right there during that time of my life. And I used to do book reports and, cut up these magazines, put pictures in my book reports, and teachers would, just be blown away by some of the images. And that's when I really started noticing photography. I'll come back to that part of the story in a minute, but I went out and over my lifetime, I think it was a Nikon DSL. If I'm not saying it right, pardon me. I bought a fisheye lens. I bought a wide angle lens. I bought the bag. I bought the gear. And my brain is not wired to interpret. So I would read the instructions, and it was so complicated. It almost felt like playing golf where you have to look at 10 different things to swing a club. I just, took a ton of pictures with my SLR or whatever you called it. And I kind of gave up on it. But today I'm all over my iPhone taking pictures. And that's why inspired by what you're doing, because you have skill, and you're very humble, but you have a skill that a lot of people don't have. So I was thinking about when you're talking about a story, that another photographer I know told me, and I'm just going to tell a snippet of it because there's a thread connected to what you're doing. That this fellow, he's in the United States. He's a fellow author I know, and he told me a story that he had a dream of going into taking photographs in every stadium in the NFL, and he wanted to go to the Super Bowl and actually take photos. He was quite young, and he's a bit of a rebel. He said, growing up, he had a good family and all, but he used to get himself into trouble and stuff, and caught stealing and all that. But he found this thing in this dream, and he went and he actually found his way into the stadium. He put a ball cap on and he faked his way in. He took a camera, he hid his camera, and he went down to the pit where all the photographers were, right on the sideline. I don't know how he, but back then he would get in, and he started shooting photographs. And they caught him and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" So I guess he head for the hills, and as he was going down the tunnel where the players come in, he basically came squarely eye to eye with Brett Favre, who, as we know, the Green Bay, I think it's the Packers, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. And he had a chance to get a photograph and actually chat with Brett for a couple minutes. No pun on the story of Brett there, but why I'm telling you that story is that he's another person I caught note of where he came from an interesting background, good upbringings, but he had this rebel in him, and he wanted to express. And here, I'm going to say something now and then give it back to you. In a lot of the work I do, I teach personality science to teach business people how to better themselves and get unstuck sometimes and not understand why they do what they do. And there's a certain thread in photographers, painters, people are creative. They're what I call yellow personalities. And the yellow personality is someone who lives in the moment. They live in the moment. They don't think far ahead or back, and they get bored. And in fact, they're learning now. And Dr. Hartman, who's my partner teaching that science, says, and he's a yellow personality himself, he said, the world didn't realize that when you try to teach creative people, they can't sit all day in a classroom. They can't do the same things over and over again because it's not fun. It's not living in the moment and experiencing life. And what I learned is by studying other people who in art, in your situation, there's that common thread where they're not dumb, they're brilliant, really smart people, but they needed to get out and to do something creative because that's why they were put here on the planet. Tell me what you think about that.
I totally agree. I can't focus unless I have my hands on doing something. That's
Yeah.
why I like cooking so much. Like an office job just doesn't seem like it would be. I don't know. I worry about having fun more than I worry about money, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just like I can't focus sitting behind a computer all day, I have to be out doing something or I get bored and I start to think ahead or in the past, and then it's just like I'd
Yeah.
rather just be living in
Okay.
the moment out in the woods someplace.
Well, that's brilliant, and you nailed it. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there because that's my belief, but it's backed up by personality science. My wife is about a half of her personality is that yellow. We put colors on it to teach, but the motive of fun is half her personality. And Anna just started sitting down at a table because we lost her dog, and my daughter's back east. There's nobody home now, and she started drawing one day. And she actually looked down at the bed where our little Shih Tzu was sleeping, and she drew a picture of Shadow, baby Shadow. She's a miniature, and I was blown away. It was just exactly like the dog. And my wife's been a business person all her life, and all of a sudden we discovered that she has this creative gene, but she has this other thing which I find common with you. She gets bored. We're sitting in the car driving, and she'll be looking out the window, going, "Hey, look at that! Hey, look at the bird over there! Look at it!" And I'm going, "Like, are you on crack cocaine or something? Why don't you just, why don't you just?" And then she'll look at me and she'll go, "You're just that miserable, serious Tom," which is my personality. Is really stoic and I'm quiet, but I got this passion in me to be creative. I just don't express it as well as you and my wife because it's not the dominant part, but I actually am very creative, and cooking you and I share. So just tell us about that before we move to a few things to wrapping up soon. Is that I have stood side by side with you in the kitchen, and man, you've got some skills, and
Thank you.
everything from your knife skills to management of time and organizing yourself. But what is it about? Why cooking? When did you find that, and what is it about that drives you?
I think I was 16. It just started out because it was a easy job. It was my first job, and I had a couple of friends that worked there, so I said, "Hey, why not?" And I was pretty bad at the start. I just didn't really apply myself. But then I eventually got to that point where I'm like, okay, well, this is actually not bad. I could take this someplace or at least have fun with it. And once you apply yourself to it and you start to learn really fast as you're getting into it, it's just it's in a way it's like living in the moment. You're just sitting down. You can't really think too much when you're cutting something finally because you're gonna end up cutting yourself. So you just have to learn to like let go and focus on what you're doing and then find that sort of clarity again. And it's rare to find that in a job, I think. Like maybe construction working would be similar, but if I'm working with kids at a daycare or something, it's just chaos. I don't have time to think for myself in the moment.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool, and actually that's the strength of that type of a personality is creativity, enthusiasm, and one of the challenges that these personalities have to work at is they're not good with structure, and like you said, doing the same thing over and over. So, working in a kitchen, you have to work extra hard. I'm just suggesting to keep follow through and keep things moving. So, there in itself, I think is building more skill. You're a man of many talents, and I want to just make a couple more comments here, and then we'll give it back to you to tell us about the website again, where people can find you. And everybody, I I want to say that as we're talking, I write down words to honor the guest, and so Brett, I wrote down some words. These are called leadership words; they're not scripted on my paper here. And the first one is humility. Uh, and a leader that has humility doesn't see the greatness in themselves. I've never seen you brag about your pictures. When I was out with you, you're very humble. That's a
Mhm.
great trait. Creativity in business, if you're creative and you can use your imagination, you can actually do things they call innovation. A lot of businesses want people who can think in that side of the brain to create the future. Well, man, you got creativity. Patience, I mean, 2 hours or an hour, whatever it is, to sit and wait for a species to appear, and then another 20 minutes to wait for it to turn his head. That's pretty awesome. Pretty
Yeah.
awesome. And a university professor asked young children once in a course in the USA in a university, somebody I know, they said, what's the one thing you wish that your parents would have, that your parents would have had when you're younger? And the one thing they said was patience. Let us make mistakes, just let us find our way. Persistence. Read a book. It's a well-read book. It was recommended to me by someone else, but this book is well read by many people in my circle. And Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. The key word is think. And there's a passage in there I never forget. It says most people quit when they're 2 feet from gold. And so, dude, you have persistence. It's actually seen as a trait for successful leaders. To do what you do, you have to have persistence. A lot of people couldn't. A couple more here. Vision. What I like about what you're doing is you seem to, in your mind, have a vision of what you want to do, the shot, and you know exactly when to click that shutter and get the
Yeah.
shot. That's a skill. And then the last one is peace. There's something about you, just being around you. There's a motive in you of peace. And I think peace can change the world without violence. And through your beautiful work and your personality, I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. So we honor you with that. And we're going to be now giving you an award. We'll do it virtually and inducting you into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. Usually I have that on the back screen there, but you're going to be getting a challenge coin. These were created in World War I and carried by soldiers to commit to each other. And the front of it will have the image of the show. They're hand painted and crafted. And the back of it will have a narrative that's behind the show. And by carrying it, you commit to continuing with your passion, serving the world and making an impact. You'll be joining some 45 to 50 quiet warriors a year that are in that tribe. Just know that by carrying that coin, it's an honor because you'll be connected to all of them around the world silently because of what you do. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's awesome.
We'll probably get out in the bush somewhere, get a picture of you receiving that award at some point.
I'd love to.
So, Brett, I think we're wrapping up here because we're almost out of time. I could talk to you for a lot longer. Tell us where people can get a hold of your work. I know we have a website that might be ticking there, but podcast, they
Yeah.
can't see it.
So it's called, okay, it's a bit of a mouthful. brettbrown-wildlifephotography.squarespace.com. I'll have a store up there by the end of the week, but I've got a gallery there. I show my favorite work. My Instagram is Brett Brown Photo. That's where I post the most. I put a lot of stuff up there. So that's where you can see the stuff that I'm most proud of. I try not to post stuff that I don't think is really good. I like to keep my standards high so I can keep improving.
Well, that's fantastic. And where is that display going to be? The one where two of your photos are being displayed?
Oh yeah, so that's it's called Maplewood Flats. It's run by the Wild Bird Trust. It's just in North Vancouver off Dollarton Highway. There's a building there towards the start of the trail that has there will be an exhibit up there in a couple weeks.
Fantastic. All right. Well, everybody, there it is. So many things to learn from Brett Brown about his passion, how he found photography, among other things, how he used it to improve his happiness in his own life, and how he does it. And you can find his work. I encourage you to find this podcast when it comes out and give it a like to give an honor to what Brett's doing. Also, the YouTube premiere will be released the same week as the podcast. So look for that. And we will have hopefully loaded it with some more of his stunning photos. And I believe, everybody, that Brett is on his way to winning some awards and being recognized internationally. I just have that gut feeling, and I'll be helping you, Brett, through my platform and getting the word out. So thanks for being on, man. Love your story and love you.
Thank you, man. Love you too. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being on the Quiet Warrior Show and listening in. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca